Messi leaves $10,000 tip for Waitress, her reaction goes viral. Lionel Messi sat quietly in the corner of a small, family-owned diner in Miami, his hood pulled low over his head. The glow of the neon lights outside barely touched his table, and the soft hum of conversation and the clinking of silverware created a soothing ambience. It was rare for Messi to have a moment of peace, a moment away from the cameras and the fans. The world outside might have known him as the greatest soccer player of all time, but in here, he was just another customer, a tired man seeking a simple meal after a long day. Maria, a waitress in her mid-30s, spotted him almost immediately. She had an eye for faces. Years of working double shifts at the diner had honed her ability to pick out even the slightest flicker of recognition in a crowd. But something about him was different. He wasn't drawing attention to himself. Instead, he seemed content to blend into the background, his presence quiet and unassuming. Still, there was no mistaking him, it was Lionel Messi. Maria's heart skipped a beat. She hesitated for a moment, clutching the notepad she used to take orders. What do you say to someone like him? Someone whose face was plastered on billboards and whose name echoed in stadiums across the globe. But Maria wasn't the kind to be starstruck. Life hadn't afforded her that luxury. So, with a deep breath, she approached his table, a warm smile spreading across her face. "Good evening," she said, her voice steady despite the butterflies in her stomach. "Welcome to Gino's Diner. Can I get you started with something to drink?" Messi looked up, his eyes soft and kind. There was a brief moment where their gazes met, and Maria felt a strange sense of calm. He smiled faintly, the kind of smile that didn't reach his eyes but still carried an air of sincerity. "Water is fine, thank you," he replied, his voice quiet and accented, each word deliberate. Maria nodded, scribbling on her notepad. "Water it is. And, take your time with the menu. No rush." As she walked away, she couldn't help but glance back at him. He was flipping through the menu, his expression focused, as if deciding between a club sandwich and a plate of spaghetti was the most important decision of his day. For a moment, Maria allowed herself to wonder what it must be like to live in his world, a world of unimaginable wealth, talent, and fame. And yet, here he was, sitting alone in her little corner of the city, just another customer. Behind the counter, her coworker Jamie leaned in close, his voice a conspiratorial whisper. "Is that who I think it is?" Maria nodded subtly, not wanting to draw any unnecessary attention. "Keep it down, Jamie. He's trying to stay under the radar." Jamie's eyes widened, but he didn't press further. Maria grabbed a glass of water and returned to Messi's table, placing it gently in front of him. "Have you decided, or do you need a few more minutes?" she asked. "I'll have the spaghetti," he said simply, folding the menu and handing it to her. "Good choice," Maria replied. "It's one of our best dishes. I'll get that started for you." As she walked back to the kitchen to put in his order, she couldn't shake the feeling that this encounter was special, though she couldn't quite pinpoint why. Maybe it was the quiet humility he exuded, or maybe it was just the surreal nature of serving dinner to Lionel Messi. Either way, Maria resolved to treat him like any other customer. He deserved a moment of normalcy, and she wasn't about to ruin that. The kitchen bustled with activity as the cooks prepared orders. Maria leaned against the counter, stealing a moment to catch her breath. She thought about her son, Matteo, who was at home with her mother. He would be asleep by now, but the thought of his face lit up with excitement as he watched soccer games on their old, flickering TV made her smile. Matteo idolized Messi. To him, the soccer star was a hero, a symbol of everything good and inspiring in the world. When the plate of spaghetti was ready, Maria carried it carefully to Messi's table, setting it down with practiced grace. "Here you go. Enjoy." "Thank you," Messi said, his eyes meeting hers again for a brief moment. Maria nodded and returned to her duties, giving him space to eat in peace. She resisted the urge to hover, though her curiosity itched at the back of her mind. What brought him here? Was he in town for a match? Or was this just a rare, quiet moment in a life otherwise consumed by the relentless pace of stardom? Time seemed to pass quickly. Messi ate slowly, savoring each bite as if he hadn't had a proper meal in days. Maria checked on him once, refilling his water glass and exchanging polite words. He thanked her again, his voice warm and genuine. When he was done, Messi signaled for the check. Maria brought it over, placing it on the table with a smile. "Whenever you're ready." Messi pulled out his wallet, his movements unhurried. As he placed the cash inside the check holder, Maria noticed he added a folded piece of paper. He pushed it toward her and stood, adjusting his hood. "Thank you," he said, his words carrying a weight she couldn't quite decipher. Maria watched as he walked toward the door, his steps measured and calm. She didn't open the check holder until he was gone, the soft chime of the diner door signaling his departure. When she did, her breath caught in her throat. Inside was $10,000 in cash, crisp, neatly stacked bills. Her hands trembled as she unfolded the piece of paper, her eyes scanning the note Messi had left behind. "Thank you for your kindness. The world needs more people like you. Messi." Tears welled up in Maria's eyes as she stared at the note and the money. For a moment, she was frozen, unable to process what had just happened. Her heart pounded in her chest, a mix of disbelief, gratitude, and overwhelming emotion coursing through her. Jamie rushed over, his eyes wide. "Maria, are you okay?" "What's?" Maria showed him the cash and the note, her voice shaky. "He left this. He left all of this." Jamie's jaw dropped, and for a moment, the two of them just stared at the money, the magnitude of the gesture sinking in. Maria's mind raced. She thought of Matteo, of the medical bills that had been piling up, of the nights she spent worrying about how to make ends meet. This money was a lifeline, a miracle she hadn't dared to hope for. But it wasn't just the money, it was the message. Messi had seen her, truly seen her, in a way she hadn't felt in years. His words echoed in her mind, a reminder that even in the smallest moments, kindness could make a world of difference. The diner seemed quieter now, as if the weight of what had just happened had settled over the room like a gentle hush. Maria clutched the note tightly, her tears falling freely. In that moment, she felt a glimmer of hope she hadn't felt in a long time, a hope that maybe, just maybe, things were about to change. Maria sat in the break room, the note from Messi still clutched tightly in her hand. Her mind was racing, replaying every second of their interaction. It wasn't just the money, though that in itself was life-changing, but the gesture, the acknowledgement. For years, she had worked tirelessly, barely scraping by, often feeling invisible to the world around her. But tonight, someone had noticed her. Not just anyone, Lionel Messi, of all people. Jamie leaned against the doorframe, watching her with a mix of amazement and curiosity. "Maria," he said softly, breaking the silence, "do you know what this means? I mean, do you even realize how big this is?" She looked up, her eyes still glistening with tears. "I don't know, Jamie. It's overwhelming. Who does something like this?" "Someone with a heart, that's who," Jamie replied, his voice filled with admiration. "You've been through so much, Maria. If anyone deserves this, it's you." Maria shook her head, trying to make sense of the moment. "But why me? I didn't do anything special. I just treated him like a normal person." "Exactly," Jamie said, pointing at her. "That's the thing. You treated him like a human being, not a superstar. Maybe that's what he needed tonight." Maria thought about it, her mind drifting to the quiet sadness she'd seen in Messi's eyes. He hadn't seemed like the confident, untouchable athlete the world adored. He'd seemed tired, perhaps even lonely. It was a side of him the public rarely, if ever, got to see. "I don't even know how to thank him," Maria whispered, her voice breaking. "This money. Jamie, it's more than just money. It's everything. Matteo's medical bills, the rent. I can finally breathe." Jamie's face softened. "You don't need to thank him, Maria. He saw something in you, something worth recognizing. That's thanks enough." But Maria wasn't so sure. This wasn't just a random act of kindness, It was deliberate, thoughtful. She wanted to honor that. She wanted him to know what his gesture meant to her. The next morning, Maria woke up to the sound of Matteo's laughter in the living room. It was a rare sound these days, one that filled her heart with both joy and sorrow. She hurried out of bed and found him sitting on the couch, his little face illuminated by the glow of the television. "Mom! Look," he exclaimed, pointing at the screen. "It's Messi. He's trending everywhere." Maria's heart skipped a beat. She glanced at the TV, and sure enough, there he was, his image plastered across the news, headlines flashing below. But it wasn't about his performance on the field or a new endorsement deal. It was about the $10,000 tip he'd left at the diner. Her hands flew to her mouth as she listened to the news anchor. Reports surfaced last night of Lionel Messi leaving a generous $10,000 tip for a waitress at a small Miami diner. Sources say the waitress, a hard-working single mother, was overwhelmed by the act of kindness. Social media is buzzing with reactions, calling Messi's gesture inspirational and a reminder of the power of humanity. Maria sank onto the couch, her heart pounding. "Oh no," she muttered under her breath. "This is not what I wanted." Matteo turned to her, confused. "Mom? What's wrong? Messi's a hero. Everyone's saying so." She forced a smile, ruffling his hair. "He is, sweetheart. He absolutely is. But I didn't want this to be about me." Her phone buzzed on the coffee table, interrupting her thoughts. She picked it up and saw dozens of notifications, texts from friends, messages on social media, and even a few missed calls. Word had spread, and people wanted to know her story. Maria scrolled through the messages, her anxiety mounting. Some were kind and supportive, but others were invasive, prying for details she wasn't ready to share. She felt exposed, vulnerable, as if her life had been thrust into the spotlight without her consent. She leaned back against the couch, closing her eyes and taking a deep breath. This wasn't about her, she reminded herself. It was about Messi's gesture, his kindness. She needed to focus on that. Later that day, Maria went back to the diner for her shift. She expected it to be a quiet day, but the moment she walked through the door, she was greeted with a round of applause. Her coworkers and a few regular customers had gathered, their faces alight with excitement. "Maria!" Jamie called out, rushing over to her. "You're famous." She groaned, covering her face with her hands. "Jamie, please. I don't want this." "But why not?" he asked, genuinely puzzled. "This is amazing. People are inspired by your story. By his generosity." Maria sighed, her shoulders slumping. "I didn't ask for this, Jamie. I'm grateful, of course I am, but I don't want to be some internet sensation. I just want to take care of my son and live my life." Jamie placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "I get it, Maria. But maybe this is bigger than you. Maybe this is about showing people that kindness still exists, that good things can happen when you least expect them." Maria nodded slowly, his words sinking in. Maybe he was right. Maybe there was a reason this was happening. Still, she couldn't shake the feeling of unease. The day passed in a blur of customers and questions. People came into the diner, hoping to catch a glimpse of the lucky waitress who had received Messi's tip. Some wanted to hear her story, others just wanted to take a photo with her. It was overwhelming, to say the least. But through it all, Maria remained humble. She answered questions politely, posed for photos when asked, and kept her focus on her work. After all, she still had bills to pay, and her life hadn't magically changed overnight. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm golden glow over the city, Maria found herself standing outside the diner, staring at the piece of paper Messi had left behind. She read his words over and over, her heart swelling with gratitude. She knew what she had to do. Maria pulled out her phone and opened a new email. She typed out a message, addressing it to the official contact for Messi's management team. It took her a while to find the right words, but eventually, she settled on something simple and heartfelt. Dear Mr. Messi, I don't know if this message will ever reach you, but I wanted to try. My name is Maria, and I'm the waitress you met at Gino's diner. I don't have the words to fully express my gratitude for your generosity and kindness. What you did for me and my son, Matteo, is something I'll never forget. The money you left will change our lives. It will help me pay off Matteo's medical bills, catch up on rent, and finally breathe a little easier. But more than that, your gesture reminded me that there's still goodness in the world. You saw me when I felt invisible, and that means more to me than I can put into words. Thank you for everything. You're not just a great athlete, you're a great person. Sincerely, Maria. She hit send, her heart pounding as she watched the message disappear into the digital void. She had no idea if it would ever reach him, but she felt a sense of peace knowing she'd tried. As she walked home that evening, the city lights twinkling above her, Maria couldn't help but smile. Life had thrown her countless challenges, but for the first time in a long time, she felt hopeful. Messi's kindness had given her more than just financial relief, it had given her the strength to keep going. And somewhere, in the quiet corner of a bustling world, Lionel Messi smiled too, knowing that his small act of kindness had made all the difference. The following morning, Maria woke to the sound of her phone buzzing incessantly. She groaned, reaching for it on the bedside table, still half asleep. The screen was filled with notifications, dozens of missed calls, texts, and emails. For a moment, she thought it might be work-related, but then it hit her. The news, the tip, the message. It was all spiraling into something much bigger than she had anticipated. Her heart sank as she read through the texts. Friends and acquaintances were congratulating her, some jokingly asking for loans, and others marveling at her luck. But mixed in were messages from reporters, bloggers, and even strangers, all asking for interviews or statements. It felt overwhelming, as if her life had been cracked open for the world to see. Mom? Matteo's small voice broke through her thoughts. She turned to see him standing in the doorway, clutching his favorite stuffed animal. His brown eyes were wide with concern. Are you okay? Maria forced a smile, though she knew it didn't quite reach her eyes. I'm fine, sweetheart. Just, a lot of people messaging me. Matteo climbed onto the bed and snuggled up next to her. Is it because of Messi? She hesitated for a moment, then nodded. Yeah, it is. I think he's the coolest, Matteo said, his voice filled with the innocence of a child who still believed the world was full of heroes. Do you think he'll come back to the diner? Maria chuckled softly, wrapping an arm around her son. I don't know, honey. He's a very busy man. Matteo's face lit up with an idea. Maybe you can invite him to dinner. I could show him my soccer ball trick. The thought made Maria smile, though she knew it was unlikely. Still, she couldn't help but wish she could thank Messi in person, to let him see how much his gesture had impacted her and Matteo's lives. The day passed in a blur of activity. Maria tried her best to keep things normal for Matteo, taking him to the park and helping him with his homework. But the constant buzz of her phone made it hard to focus. Calls from unknown numbers, emails marked urgent, and even a few knocks at her apartment door from reporters who had somehow tracked her down. She felt like her privacy was slipping away, piece by piece. By the time evening rolled around, Maria was emotionally drained. She sat at the kitchen table, staring at the stack of bills that had haunted her for months. But now, for the first time, she felt a sense of control. With Messi's gift, she could pay off Matteo's medical expenses and still have enough to cover rent for the next several months. It was a feeling of relief so profound that it brought tears to her eyes. Her phone buzzed again, and this time, she saw an email notification that made her freeze. Her hands trembled as she clicked it open. The message was short but polite, written in both English and Spanish. Dear Maria, thank you for your kind words. Mr. Messi was deeply moved by your message and asked us to reach out. He is happy to know that his gesture brought some comfort to you and your son. While he values his privacy and cannot make public appearances, he wishes you all the best and hopes that you and Matteo continue to find strength and happiness. Warm regards. Messi Management Team. Maria stared at the screen, her emotions swirling. It wasn't the response she had hoped for, but it was still something, a connection, however small. She reread the words, he was deeply moved, and felt a surge of gratitude. Even though she might never meet him again, knowing he had read her message meant the world. The next week, Maria returned to work at the diner. The initial buzz had died down somewhat, though there were still a few customers who came in hoping to see the messy waitress. Maria handled it all with grace, smiling politely and steering conversations back to their orders. Life was slowly returning to normal, or as normal as it could be after such a whirlwind. One quiet afternoon, while wiping down tables, Maria noticed an older woman sitting alone near the window. She was well-dressed but unassuming, her gray hair tied back neatly. Maria approached her with a warm smile. "Hi there. Can I get you something to drink while you look at the menu?" The woman looked up, her eyes kind but sharp. "Just a coffee, please. Black." Maria nodded and walked back to the counter, preparing the coffee and bringing it to the table. The woman thanked her and took a sip before speaking again. "You're Maria, aren't you? The one Messi left the tip for?" Maria froze for a moment, then nodded hesitantly. "Yes, that's me." The woman smiled softly. "I read about it. Quite the story. It must have been overwhelming." It was, Maria admitted, sitting down across from her for a moment since the diner was nearly empty. But it was also life-changing. "I still don't know why he did it, but I'm so grateful." The woman studied her for a moment, then said, "Kindness doesn't always need a reason, dear. Sometimes, people see something in you that reminds them of what's good in the world. Maybe that's what he saw in you." Maria felt a lump form in her throat. She hadn't thought of it that way before. "Thank you," she said quietly. "That means a lot." The woman nodded, finishing her coffee and leaving a generous tip before walking out. Maria watched her go, a sense of peace settling over her. The encounter reminded her that Messi's gesture wasn't just about the money, it was about hope, about seeing and being seen. As the days turned into weeks, Maria began to notice small but meaningful changes in her life. She was able to enroll Matteo in a better school, one with a soccer program that made his eyes light up with excitement. She finally replaced the flickering light bulb in the kitchen and bought a new pair of shoes for work. They were little things, but to Maria, they felt monumental. One evening, as Matteo practiced his soccer moves in the living room, Maria sat on the couch and watched him, her heart swelling with pride. He was happy, truly happy, and for the first time in a long time, so was she. "Mom!" Matteo called out, holding up his soccer ball. "Do you think Messi would like my trick?" Maria laughed, her chest tightening with emotion. "I think he'd love it, sweetheart." Matteo grinned, spinning the ball on his finger and pretending to score a goal. Maria clapped, cheering him on, her laughter filling the small apartment. In that moment, she realized that Messi's gesture had done more than just ease her financial burdens. It had given her something far more valuable, a renewed sense of hope and the strength to believe in better days ahead. Somewhere, she hoped Messi knew the ripple effect of his kindness, that a small act in a quiet diner had changed the lives of a mother and her son forever. The weeks rolled into months, and life began to settle into a steady rhythm for Maria and Matteo. Though the initial wave of media attention surrounding Messi's gesture had largely faded, the impact it left on Maria's life was profound and enduring. Her days were still busy, working long shifts at the diner, helping Matteo with his homework, and trying to be present in his world, but for the first time in years, she didn't feel the crushing weight of hopelessness pressing down on her shoulders. Matteo was thriving at his new school. The soccer program was everything he'd dreamed of and more. Each day, he came home bubbling with stories about practice, his teammates, and the moves he was learning. He even started dreaming out loud about playing professionally someday. "Mom," he said one evening, balancing a soccer ball on his knee, "do you think I could be as good as Messi one day?" Maria smiled warmly, her heart swelling with pride and love. If you work hard and never give up, Matteo, you can be anything you want to be. His face lit up with determination, and Maria knew that this newfound confidence in him wasn't just about soccer, it was about having the space to dream, something she hadn't always been able to provide. Messi's kindness had opened a door for her son, giving him the freedom to imagine a future without limits. One quiet evening after her shift, Maria sat at the small dining table, going through a stack of mail. Most of it was mundane, utility bills, advertisements, but one envelope stood out. It was thick and embossed with elegant lettering. She frowned, curious, and carefully opened it. Inside was an invitation. Her breath caught as she read the words. Dear Maria, you are cordially invited to attend a private charity event hosted by Lionel Messi. This event is dedicated to supporting families in need and fostering opportunities for young athletes. We would be honored by your presence. Warm regards. Messi Management Team. Maria's hands trembled as she reread the invitation, disbelief coursing through her. She glanced at the date, just 2 weeks away, and the location, an elegant venue in Miami. A part of her couldn't believe it. Messi was inviting her, specifically, to attend his event. Matteo walked into the room, his soccer ball under one arm. What's that, Mom? He asked, peering over her shoulder. Maria hesitated for a moment before handing him the invitation. His eyes widened as he read it, his face lighting up with pure excitement. Mom! Messi wants to meet you. You have to go, he exclaimed, practically bouncing in place. Maria laughed softly, though her nerves were starting to get the better of her. It's not just me, Matteo. It says it's a charity event. There will probably be a lot of people there. But he invited you. Matteo insisted, his voice full of conviction. He remembers you, Mom. You can't say no. Maria sighed, glancing at the invitation again. The idea of going felt daunting. She wasn't used to events like this, with elegant dresses and formal speeches. She didn't even own anything appropriate to wear. But Matteo's excitement was infectious, and deep down, she knew this was an opportunity she couldn't pass up. All right, she said finally, smiling at her son. I'll go. Matteo threw his arms around her, grinning from ear to ear. You're gonna be amazing, Mom. Messi's gonna be so happy to see you. In the days leading up to the event, Maria prepared as best she could. With the help of her co-workers, who were just as excited as Matteo, she found a simple but beautiful dress that made her feel confident. Jamie even loaned her a pair of sparkling earrings, insisting they completed the look. The night of the event arrived, and Maria stood outside the grand venue, taking a deep breath to steady herself. The building was stunning, with its towering glass windows and golden lights illuminating the night sky. Luxury cars pulled up one after another, dropping off elegantly dressed guests who disappeared into the glittering interior. Maria felt a wave of nervousness as she stepped inside, clutching her invitation tightly. The room was even more magnificent than she had imagined, with chandeliers casting a warm glow over the crowd. Tables were set with fine china, and a stage at the front of the room featured a large banner that read, Champions of Kindness, a night to give back. She felt out of place at first, surrounded by so many wealthy and influential people. But as she moved through the room, she noticed something that put her at ease. Everyone here was united by a shared purpose. The atmosphere was warm and welcoming, and conversations buzzed with excitement and generosity. A member of Messi's team approached her with a friendly smile. Maria? It's so wonderful to have you here. Mr. Messi will be arriving shortly, and he's looking forward to seeing you. Maria nodded, her heart pounding in her chest. She couldn't believe this was really happening. Not long after, a hush fell over the room. All eyes turned to the entrance as Lionel Messi walked in, dressed in a sleek black suit that somehow still carried his signature humility. He moved through the crowd with grace, greeting guests with warm handshakes and genuine smiles. When his eyes met Maria's, he stopped. A wide, genuine smile spread across his face, and he made his way toward her. Maria felt her breath catch as he approached, his presence commanding yet kind. "Maria," he said, his voice soft but filled with warmth. "It's good to see you again." She blinked, struggling to find the right words. "Mr. Messi. Thank you. For everything." He held up a hand, shaking his head. "Please, call me Lionel. And you don't need to thank me. Your message meant a lot to me. I'm glad I could help." Tears welled up in Maria's eyes as she nodded. "You didn't just help. You changed my life, Mateo's life. I'll never forget what you did." Messi's smile deepened, and he placed a hand on her shoulder. "It was the least I could do. People like you, who work hard and never give up, inspire me. You remind me of why I do what I do." For a moment, Maria was speechless. This wasn't just a meeting with a celebrity, it was a meeting of two people connected by a shared understanding of kindness and resilience. As the night went on, Maria found herself mingling with other guests, sharing her story and learning about the causes the event was supporting. She felt a sense of belonging she hadn't expected, as if her journey had led her to this moment for a reason. Before the evening ended, Messi gave a heartfelt speech on stage, thanking everyone for their contributions and emphasizing the importance of compassion. Maria listened intently, her heart swelling with gratitude. When the event finally came to a close, Maria returned home with a newfound sense of purpose. Mateo greeted her excitedly, eager to hear every detail. As she recounted the evening, she realized that Messi's gesture had done more than change her circumstances, it had shown her the power of kindness and the importance of paying it forward. From that day on, Maria vowed to carry that message with her, to live a life of gratitude and compassion. And in the quiet moments, when the world seemed overwhelming, she would remember that even the smallest acts of kindness could ripple outward and transform lives.